The Bethlehem Steel Corporation is known all over the world. This breathtaking place produced steel for the Chrysler Building in New York, the Golden Gate Bridge, the warships in World War II, Madison Square Garden in New York City, and copious others. The Bethlehem Steel Corporation produced steel at this plant until 1995.
My name is Ron Ennis. I used to work for Bethlehem Steel for 7 years, from March 1979 all the way to 1986. And for 38 years now, I've held a union card. I'm a member of a labor union, and I've written about the steel strike of 1910.
My name is Roger Hudak. I'm chairman of the Mayor Southside Task Force, lifelong resident of the city of Bethlehem. I taught at Liberty High School for 28 years.
My name's Ron Lintner. When I first started, I was a laborer, and then I went through an apprenticeship training and became a millwright.
To produce major amounts of steel, they needed a plethora of workers, and they needed them to work numerous extensive hours. The conditions were poor for the laborers at Bethlehem Steel. The average worker at Bethlehem Steel received less than 30 cents an hour. They worked 12 hours a day and 7 days a week. Additionally, the workers had to work overtime and on Sundays. They were unable to contact or meet with their employers. The working conditions in the shops were crude and hazardous. There were no safety rules. The workers did not have hard hats and safety gloves that all companies require today.
In 1905, 1906, in those days it was not illegal to import immigrant labor. They actually paid to bring those guys over who worked in iron mills in Bratislava in Slovakia. So they had ready-to-go workers already trained in the hot metal business. Now those guys were paid by the Bethlehem Steel, but they weren't paid as much as the American workers were paid. But there also were no unions at the time. The Steelworkers Union was in its infancy at that time, and they were not at all happy with these foreigners coming in and taking their jobs, many of their jobs, because these guys worked for less money. The workers kept their mouths shut, usually, especially the imports.
Before the workers started the strike, they had to work overtime in the machine shop and work on Sundays. These were basic causes of the strike. A reason backing the first few was when a laborer avoided work on a Saturday, so he wouldn't get asked to work on Sunday. When he came back on Monday, he told his fellow workmates why he wasn't there. Word spread around, and his foreman ended up hearing what happened. His foreman fired him. This caused workmen from machine shop number 4 to select 3 machinists to ask the foreman and shop superintendent for a reinstatement of the fired worker. They decided to ask as well for no more Sunday work and overtime to be reduced in the machine shops. These 3 workers were fired in addition a few days later for declining to work overtime. This triggered the men.
The primary reason was hours of work. The men were working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they wanted to work less hours. That was the most important, to get the hours down.
On February 4th, 1910, they went on strike to protest the layoff of the men who acted together to talk about the injustices with the company.
I don't think they went into it like we're going to change history. They actually didn't even go into it thinking, well, we're going to start a labor union. They wanted to spend time with their families. They wanted to raise their children, and they couldn't do that if they were working here 7 days a week, 12 hours each day.
What I know is what I was told from guys who were working there, who weren't working there then. They were all long gone. But seeing the conditions that were there, and I was working there, I saw accidents and I saw people had gotten hurt and I had been hurt, and I just can't imagine without safety equipment, especially what that must have been like. It must have been horrible.
After about 3 weeks, Charles Schwab, the president of the Bethlehem Steel Corporation, was beginning to get upset with what the workers were doing. He waited for the opportune moment to call the governor to have police sent down to break up the havoc. He paused his interrogation on the strike until someone broke a window, giving Schwab the power to call the governor. With the police he was given, he had them storm and scatter the crowds that lined the streets, waiting for the parade of strikers to pass.
He wanted to scare the governor into thinking, oh, you look at it, they're vandalizing my property, destroying my property. So Schwab and Eugene Grace pressured the sheriff, which was the highest law enforcement officer at the time in the county, keep calling that governor because they're going to destroy the property. And the local police, there's not enough of them to stop 9,000 guys that are out on strike. The local sheriff, he called the governor up. Governor said, no, you take care of it yourself. The sheriff telegrammed, I'm sorry, it wasn't a phone call, it was telegrammed the governor a second time and said, there's bloodshed, there's been rioting, it's going to get worse. Well, there was no bloodshed. There really wasn't any rioting other than a broken window here or there. But that kind of alarming telegram scared the governor. And the governor ordered 25 of them to come up from Philadelphia into South Bethlehem on an early Saturday morning, February 26th. And around 8:30, they go out into the streets. And by then, people had heard the state police. There was about 25 state troopers in town on horseback. And people started to crowd across the street, third Street here. They said hundreds, maybe a little over 1,000 people, all along the streets. The state police broke up in squads of about 4. 4 go here, 4 go there, 4 go over here, and they're going to disperse the crowd, get them off the streets. And they started prodding people with their batons. They're on horses. Get back, go home, you don't belong here. As they were pushing the crowds up here on 3rd and Pierce Street, the doors of the Majestic Hotel had opened up. People go into the hotel to get off the sidewalk. And maybe it was the prodding of the people and somebody hit the horse. They're not really sure what happened. One of the state troopers at the Majestic Hotel said he saw his buddy, fellow trooper, his horse rear up. He thought somebody was throwing rocks. He thought somebody shot, whatever. He pulled out his gun and he fired 2 shots into the hotel, and 1 killed Joseph Zambo. He fell. Another shot came in and wounded another guy, disfiguring him in the face. The state police came. The state trooper came into the hotel, grabbed the man who was injured, pulled him out of the hotel, threw him on the street, left Joseph Zambo inside to bleed to death, and the state troopers got back on their horse, trotted away.
Even though the riot excited the striking workers for a little while to remain on strike, by early May, only a fraction of the almost 9,000 men originally involved remained on strike.
I think it showed people in the community what Charles Schwab, who was running the company, what he was really like. I think people at first thought he was this wonderful guy. The way he took care of the men, he liked to be called Charlie rather than Mr. Schwab or Mr. President. But I think after this strike, they saw how ruthless and brutal he could be, how difficult he was, how he really didn't think of the men as equals at all. I mean, that was typical of the time, but I think they really saw what kind of guy he was.
As the strike was concluding, the U.S. Bureau of Labor reported that just over 97% of the workforce had a workday of 10 hours and 51% worked 12 hours or more. 29% of the men worked 7 days a week with no extra pay for Sunday work. Disappointingly, the report had little effect on Schwab's mind. He let the laborers back to work, but the document made no changes to the laborers' working conditions or wages.
Now, well, the outcome eventually was the formation of the United Steelworkers Union. It became a partnership between the company and the unions to get the job done.
It cracked the door open towards other legislative efforts in years to come that established what we have today, the 40-hour work week.
Although things didn't change immediately for the men, this event helped start a path towards labor unions across the United States. And serves as an example to all of us how determined men can initiate change as they were taking a stand in history.